Hello again everybody, so today I'm back and today I'm going to be doing my wrap up for the month of February and my to be read for the month of March. So I know I'm already a little bit late and that we're already a good week or so into March, but I've basically been trying to finish my books in February and it's been quite busy. I've been on holiday and today I'm back to let you know what I'm going to be reading for the next 4 weeks or so. Firstly though, we're going to look at the books I read over the month of February. So there's a couple of things to note this week. So as usual, with the same as last time, I'm going to have done a review for most of these books somewhere, whether it's a full review or one of my 60-second reviews. So I'll leave a link for any of them down below if you want any more information. Other than that, the other difference is that I'm actually tweaking the scoring system a bit. So I'm still going to do it on a scale of 0 to 10. But basically I'm changing what the weightings mean. I was essentially giving a lot of 7 to 10 scores and nothing any lower, and I feel like I should use the whole range more. So from today, the scoring system is going to be a little bit harsher. So whereas previously giving a book a 5 out of 10 would have been a sign that it wasn't very good at all, now a 5 out of 10 is just for an average book. 10 out of 10 is literally perfect, 0 out of 10 is the worst book I've ever read, and it's going to be a bit more of a scale. So something I give a 7 out of 10 to today might be better than something I gave a 7 out of 10 to a year ago. But I think it's a slightly better scale and hopefully it'll make sense as we go along. First up is Borges' Labyrinths. So this is a collection of short stories that I've had recommended by a few friends and colleagues. And because I've been enjoying short stories, I wanted to try something more literary. Overall, very mixed feelings about this. Some of the stories are incredible and leave you thinking for hours afterwards. The other half are really hard to get into and just really not interesting at all. He does create absolutely wonderful worlds. Kind of the universes and the completely unique scenarios he comes up with are amazing. It's just the way he develops them that sometimes really fell wide of the mark for me. I can appreciate why a lot of people liked him, but some of the styles or some of the really philosophical concepts weren't the kind of thing I enjoy in my reading. I gave that a 5 out of 10. Moving into YA then, I read a couple of YA books this month, starting off with Illuminate. So I've talked about this a lot recently because it's a very interesting narrative style used in this book. It's quite a generic sci-fi about people on a spaceship, and there's a bit of a rogue AI situation, there's quarantine and illness situation, and there's this big central love story that goes through it. But the main thing about this, which is amazing, is it's told through things like memos and recordings from security cameras and text message conversations and those kinds of things which are really unusual and made it really interesting to read. The plot itself, a little bit disappointing. It becomes so over-reliant on the love story between the two main characters and it just felt so heavy-handed and overdone, and I didn't like the development of their relationship and it just didn't tick any of the boxes for me on that front. The rest of the story was okay, but nothing stand out. If it had just been the story that I'd read about, I wouldn't have picked this book up. It's the narrative style that does it for me, and it really does make it interesting. All in all, though, still a bit disappointing. Could have delivered a little bit better. I gave this a 6 out of 10. The next YA then is Half Bad by Sally Green. So I've already read this once. I'm rereading it because the final book in the trilogy is about to come out and I wanted to really immerse myself in it all in one go. The best thing about this book is the world it creates. Essentially, it's about a world of witches where there's black and white witches and there's quite a lot of tension and disunity between them. And it covers a lot of the racial issues that come with that. But what it does really well is the way it kind of combines their culture and their world and sneaks it into the human world that we know. So it almost feels a bit believable in the way it's crafted. The characters are really good. I probably connected more this time than I have in the past. And there's a really amazing second person perspective introduction, which you don't get very often, and I really got hooked with. I really enjoyed rereading this and I'm really excited to read the second two. I give this an 8 out of 10. This month I did actually only read one non-fiction. I know, shock, horror, gasps, screams, all the like. But the one I did read this month was very good. It's Jeremy Hutchinson's Case Histories. So I've recently put up a 60-second review for this, and it's one that combines a really interesting mixture of genres. It covers law and history and biography all into one really nice book. It's about Jeremy Hutchinson, a really important 20th century British lawyer, and the cases he's been involved in and their significance. It's so readable. It covers individual chapters which cover individual cases, and it is so much fun to read. Literally, I was like thumbing through it as quick as I could because I was absolutely so engrossed with the stories. Even if it's cases you know the results of, you know the ins and outs of, things like Lady Chatterley's Lover, which are quite well known. The insight this gives is still amazing. I could happily read, 5 or 6 more books full of just little anecdotes from his cases that were dropped in, that weren't really fully explored, that I would love to hear about. I think it's a really, really good book overall. I gave this an 8 out of 10. The next thing I read this month was some manga, and it's Death Note Volume 4. So anyone that's watched any of my videos will know that I'm a little bit in love with the Death Note series of all the mangas I've read, and I've started reading quite a few. This is the series that's hooked me the most, with the most interesting concept, the most interesting characters, and this carries it on. I'm going to try and avoid saying too many spoilers, but basically there's quite a big shift in what the book's about in this. There's quite a big paradigm shift as some characters leave and new ones join, and the whole dynamic changes. I first struggled to engage with the new system that works in it, and I wasn't quite as hooked. I was really invested in the previous story, and when that finished and something new started, it took a while to get going, which kind of dragged a little bit, but by the end of this, I am hooked on the new story, and I can't wait to read Volume 5. I'm just waiting and savouring them a little bit, because I don't want to read them all in one go. In comparison to the others, because of the slightly slower middle part, this is a little bit weaker, but overall I still thought it was very good. I gave this a 7 out of 10. The last book, or actually the first book I read this month then, was Morningstar by Pierce Brown. So even if you've probably only watched one of my other videos, you will know about my love for the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. The first two books were one of my favourite books of both years, and this has been so hotly anticipated and definitely lived up to all my expectations. I would say, get the negative out of the way first, I didn't enjoy it quite as much as Golden Sun. I feel like Golden Sun, the second book, really built up so much stuff for the final book in the trilogy. The cliffhanger leaves you on such a note of anticipation and excitement. This, because it has to wrap up the loose ends, is inevitably going to leave a few things unanswered or redeem a few things in ways you wouldn't expect. The epilogue, for example, I feel like is quite unnecessary and feels a little bit unfitting with the rest of the style of the book, but I can see why they did it. And all in all, it's a really good summation. It's brutal. So many of the supporting characters get really amazing arcs that develop them really well, and I'm so invested with the main character. I'm so torn now, because half of me wants more books about these characters in this universe, the other half of me thinks they've suffered enough, and that if the author drags them through the grinder anymore, he's just evil. But I'd be quite okay with it, really. All in all, I gave this a 9 out of 10. I'm going to be doing a full review of the whole series in the next few weeks, so look forward to that. But if you've not started this series, please God start them. So that's the books I read over the month of February. It's a shorter month than with going on holiday. I actually didn't read as much as I'd hoped I would. But without further ado, I'm going to show you the books I'm going to read in March, and hopefully this could be a really good reading month. The first books I'm going to read this month then, probably not a surprise given the start of this video, are Half Wild and Half Lost by Sally Green. So these are book 2 and 3 in the Half Bad series. Book 3 isn't actually out yet. It's officially released at the end of the month, but I've managed to get an advance copy. Hallelujah! And I'm so excited to read these. The world set up in the first book is so amazing, and I think it's going to carry on really strong. There is a relationship between two of the characters in this book, Nathan and Gabriel. I have never had such strong feelings about how much I want a couple to get together in my life, and I'm very nervous that someone might die or it might not happen, but I'm really intrigued to see how it goes with these books, and I can't wait to get started on those. Carrying on the YA stuff then, I've read quite a lot recently, is I'll Give You the Sun by Yandy Nelson. So basically I've been sold this as the next good read after The Art of Being Normal. It covers similar issues, and it kind of covers the whole issues of being a teenager and what that involves going through, but without being really mundane and uninteresting. It's got really well crafted characters and you really get hooked on them. So I'm quite looking forward to giving this a read, and hopefully it can live it up to the footsteps of The Art of Being Normal, which is kind of how I've been sold it. So hopefully it can deliver. Moving into some other genres, I'm really excited to be reading Peter May the Firemaker this month. So Peter May is a really prolific crime author, and this is a kind of book I've been wanting to read for a while. I really like crime set in Asia, China, Japan, Hong Kong, any of those areas. And as if by magic, Peter May has just had his first series reissued, and that is The Firemaker. It's the first in that series, and these are set in Beijing, with a Beijing detective and an American pathologist, and it sounds like it's perfect. I really want to read a lot of this stuff at the minute, and I cannot wait to get started on that. Next up is a sci-fi that's actually a follow-up to something I read in the past few months, and that's Dune Masaya by Frank Herbert. So Dune, one of the most well-known sci-fi books probably in history, and definitely I think it's statistically one of the best-selling. And this is the sequel. It's considerably thinner. I really enjoyed Dune. The very first one was absolutely wonderful, and I'm really excited to see how they follow up that story. The world created is so good. There's so many stories they can tell with those characters and those systems, and I'm really excited to see how it delivers in this book. So in the past few months, most of the fiction I've been reading has actually been short stories, and that's not going to be different this month. This month I'm reading Julian Barnes' A History of the World in 10.5 chapters. So this is, as you would expect, 10 and a short chapter, basically scattered around history, based on real events and completely fictional, and it's just stories from unusual perspectives. So the first chapter, which I actually read for a first chapters tag I'm going to be uploading in the next couple of weeks, is based on a creature living on the Ark, but it's a creature that's snuck on, that wasn't invited, and it's a really interesting, politicised and unusual take on Noah and the Ark and that story, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited to see if the remaining 9.5 chapters are interesting and kind of unique perspectives on such clever issues. So I think it could be a really interesting one, and after last month's short stories being a bit disappointing, I'm really hopeful this is a good one. So that leaves us with non-fiction, and after last month being a little bit bereft of non-fiction reading, this month I'm going for quite a bit more. First up is one I've talked about quite a lot recently, and that's When Breath Becomes Air. So it's about a really, really promising young neurosurgeon who discovers he's got terminal cancer and he's got 6 months left to live. The book's written part by him and part by his widow, and it's just such an amazing story about their relationship and how they face this issue. It's got a ton of press coverage, loads of people reading it and literally sobbing through it. And with my kind of interest in things about mortality and kind of medical non-fiction, I think this is perfect for me. I cannot wait to read this book. So you might start sensing a bit of a theme here, but next up is some more medical non-fiction, in this case Reaching Down the Rabbit Hole by Alan Roper and B.D. Burrell. So this is very similar to Do No Harm and Being Mortal in that it's a really well-versed, long practicing physician, in this case a psychologist, offering up anecdotes and case notes from over her long career that is really demonstrating the importance of this kind of issue in this kind of book and psychiatry in general, and it sounds like it'll be really interesting. I've always found psychiatry interesting, and this kind of book in this style is something I've loved over the past couple of years, so I can't wait to read that. And then the last book I'm going to hopefully read this month is a bit of a carryover from last month that I haven't quite managed to read yet, and that's The 48 Laws of Power. So I do have an excuse in this case. Basically, the introduction to this book says you can read it either as a kind of episodic, read about one law at a time, or basically read it all in one go. But I found reading it all in one go is quite counterproductive. I wasn't enjoying it as much as I was dipping in and maybe reading 2 or 3 laws a day at different points. It basically gives 48 laws or rules to live by to achieve power. So that's whether that's success or power in relationships. And in each case it offers kind of historical evidence to back it up, so times when people observed it or ignored it and the results. And it's fascinating, it's exactly my kind of book. It's just one that I think you have to digest it in chunks rather than in one big go. So that's going to be something I'm going to try and read incrementally over the course of the month as well. There we have it, that's what I'm reading in the month of March, and it's some really amazing stuff. I'm really excited to read it all. Lots of sequels, which I actually haven't read for a while, and quite a lot of really interesting, unique stuff as well, and I'm really excited to see what you guys think about what I've chosen. As always, any recommendations you've got for next month are really appreciated. I actually haven't got that much sitting on my shelves that's unread that I would like to read, so I am after some suggestions for next month. That would be brilliant. As always, if you've enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, and any comments you've got would be wonderfully appreciated. I'm close now to 400 subscribers. Possibly by the time this has gone up, I've hit it, in which case thank you. If not, we're that close, we can do this. I'm also going to leave links in the description down below to all of the books that I've reviewed in other videos, just so you can see anything extra you want to read more about. And other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon with my next video.